what the critics are basically saying about Abdul Rahman Muhammad, who is the protagonist in the documentary, is that he paints Norman 3X to be this innocent guy who was in the wrong place, not even in the wrong place at the wrong time. This innocent guy who's so innocent, and then he gets accused of murder. And what his critics are saying is that he may not have murdered Malcolm X, but he actually murdered other people. I don't know any of this. I mean, this is all allegedly. But if you watch all the other videos, the general consensus is that Norman 3X did not have a really good reputation. And evidently, he was implicated in a murder a week prior to the Malcolm X murder of a guy who left the Nation of Islam but kept the photo of Elijah Muhammad in his store. And I guess they asked him to take it down, and that was like the wrong thing. And then the guy was murdered because of it. And evidently, when you listen to all these other people talking on the internet, they're also saying that a lot of Norman 3X was involved in like intimidating people that left the Nation of Islam. Like he was kind of like the muscle or some of that. So that's the huge criticism that they have for Abdul Rahman Muhammad, that he presented him as this innocent guy. And, you know, it may be a fact that he is in fact innocent of Malcolm X's murder, but the fact that he presented him as this innocent guy was not palatable to people who have been following the story for years, who do know more about it. Now, for me, I didn't know any of this, so I just was outraged that an innocent man went to prison for 20 years for a crime that he did not commit. Now that I know all of this other stuff, I still think if you did not commit that particular crime, then you should not have gone to prison for it. So if the state put him in prison for killing Malcolm X, when in fact he did not kill Malcolm X, then there should be some kind of, I don't know, that should be dealt with or addressed with. As far as the other people he allegedly murdered, then that's something else. But this documentary was about who killed Malcolm X, and from the evidence that Abdul Rahman Muhammad presented, it looks very much like Norman 3X did not kill Malcolm X. That's the conclusion you're going to draw when you finish watching it, because that's exactly where he's taking you. Now you can go and do your own research about what kind of man Norman 3X was. And there's a YouTube guy, Eric Summers. You can go into Eric Summers' YouTube channel. He also has a review on the Netflix documentary, and he talks about Norman 3X's past. There are other people on there too that talk about it. So if you're interested, go there. Now, my favorite character in the documentary series, aside from Malcolm X, of course, was Zach A. Kondo. Now, Mr. Kondo is a historian, and he has written books on the subject. And he was the most interesting because he wore African clothes and he was like an authority on the subject, and he knew what he was talking about. Whenever he opened his mouth, you were like this. So he was definitely my favorite character in the documentary. And I think I'm going to read his book. They didn't plug it in the movie. They just wrote his name, and I think they wrote historian. They didn't even write that he was an author. I had to find that out later from other people. So he seemed to be the most knowledgeable person on the subject. And my other favorite character was Tony Busa. He's a retired NYPD detective. Tony Busa was like a no-nonsense retired NYPD detective. And you got a sense that, you know, he thought that Malcolm was a threat, or he felt that Malcolm was a threat to security or whatever. I love the fact that he admitted to going in, talking to Malcolm, trying to bribe him, offering him money once Malcolm left the Nation of Islam. I love the fact that he was honest about that, because a lot of times these people, they lie and they cover up what they did, and then they leave the public just frustrated because you can never know the truth. But when they come out and they say what they did, like, you did it, it was a long time ago, we get it, you know, tell us what happened. So he was one of my favorite characters because he shed a lot of light into conspiracy theories that were always theories to me, but the fact that he was willing and able to own up to them helped. But Malcolm X did record that interview with him himself when he was trying to bribe him. So that's good. He was on tape. But there were a lot of things that he shed light on. Tony Busa was a really important person because he was in NYPD. He was a detective. He had the in and outs, and he shed a lot of light. You could tell he had a lot of respect for Malcolm X. I think most people who came into personal contact with Malcolm X had a lot of respect for him because he was like an amazing human being vibrating on all cylinders. But I think he feared him. You could tell, like, as a black man with that kind of, charisma, power, intelligence, I could tell when Tony Busa was talking that this was a man that he was afraid of, and he was probably glad that this man was gone from the earth because he was afraid of what he could do to mobilize black people. That's the sense that I got. But he is my one of my favorite characters because he shed a lot of light and he's unapologetic and he's honest about what happened. He was one of the bad guys. He did hire informants to watch Malcolm X. But what I like is that he admitted to all of it. And, when people come forth and let us, the public, know what happened with historical figures that we feel connected to or that we care about, that we love, I'm indebtedly grateful because, when they don't talk, there's so much it leaves so much room for speculation. I mean, I'm not even related to Malcolm X, and I get so frustrated that this isn't really solved. I cannot think what it's like for his daughters, for his wife, for his siblings, people that genuinely knew him and loved him, like what that must feel like to never really get the truth and to be constantly lied to. I mean, it's just horrible. So, the fact that this guy from NYPD, and there's another one, there's a retired FBI guy that talked also, but he didn't want his face to be shown. And then there's another guy who was part of some special task force. You're gonna see. So that's one of the really good parts about the documentary, that they got those people to talk. So you're not getting hearsay. You're getting it from the people who had the jobs. And from these people, you also find out there were 9 informants at the ballroom. You know that famous picture of Malcolm X on the floor, and he's getting mouth to mouth resuscitation? Well, he's getting it from an informant, and I think he was an NYPD informant. I'm not sure if he was an FBI informant, but he was an NYPD informant placed there, and he was like Malcolm X's bodyguard or Malcolm X's top security man. So when these people start talking and they start admitting what they did, it really helps you to uncover the truth. So, anyone who's out there who's like a part of any kind of conspiracy that involves a great historical figure, talk. Like, when you come out and you talk, it gives the whole thing credibility. It gives it authenticity, and it gives the public closure. It gives the families closure. Keeping it secret and going to your grave with it doesn't really help the world. You want to make the world a better place, then put an end to lies, put an end to speculation, put an end to rumors so that people can go on with their lives. So I'm really, really glad that those people at such a top level talked. I mean, they're old men now, so it doesn't even matter to them. But the fact that they are willing to come out and tell the truth, really, really, I thought it was very courageous. So those are my 3 favorite people. That historian who really had nothing to do with it, the NYPD guy, and the other guy, I can't think of his name. The conclusion gets into William Bradley. Now, they have footage of him outside. It looks like he was tucking his shotgun and literally walked right in front of the camera. And eyewitnesses and FBI reports and NYPD reports that, what's his name? William Bradley was the guy who shot Malcolm X. And from watching it, that's the conclusion that I'm drawing. It looks like he was the guy that did it. But what was shocking to me, what was shocking and outrageous and disgusting to me, was that everybody in Newark knew it. And most people in Newark know it, especially the elders in the mosque. They all know, but they kind of covered it up. And the way that they talked about it, like when the protagonist will bring up, like, okay, so this man shot Malcolm X and this other guy went to jail for 20 years for doing it when he didn't do it. They're like, oh, just let bygones be bygones. Oh, he went to Mecca and he did a circle thing for 7 times and he's forgiven and we don't need to worry about it. Those men in that documentary are so disgusting to me. I am so angry. And I thought it was just me, but then when I went online, I saw other people felt the same way. Like the fact that those men said they're defending William Bradley, defending the fact that he pulled out a shotgun and shot an innocent man in front of his 4 children and his wife. The fact that they're sitting there defending him just lets you see that sometimes people can be blinded. Now, I understand that a lot of times, a lot of the people who, at that time, a lot of people who came into the Nation of Islam were former criminals. And I believe a lot of them were truly rehabilitated. I really believe Malcolm X was truly rehabilitated. Married a woman, didn't have children out of wedlock, was faithful, didn't fornicate, didn't drink, didn't smoke, really followed the rules. The FBI tapped them 24/7. If there was something on them, they would have caught it. This is why there's rumors about Martin Luther King, but there aren't rumors about Malcolm X sleeping around. Like every single person that talks about him, all the people who hate him or like him, they always say. So the general consensus about Malcolm X, whether the person hated him or disagreed with him, everyone respected him. And when he spoke, they knew he meant what he was talking about, and they knew he was a man of integrity. Now, from watching this documentary, I saw a lot of the elders in the Nation of Islam. These are men who lived through this, and they just came across as cowards, a bunch of men who had no integrity. They're sitting there making up excuses for a murderer, not just a murderer who murdered an innocent man in front of his wife and 4 children. I think people need to still remember that. Like, it's not that he just shot somebody. He shot this person in front of his wife and his little children. And not only that, this man had a long 20-year rap sheet of like murder, assault, rape, all kinds of other things. And he got to just walk free. But not only that, but he got like a nice send-off. There's a senator who like went, there's a political figure who attended his funeral. He's also in some commercial with Cory Booker. Like they're acting like this guy is some kind of a upstanding member of the community when in fact he murdered one of our most important historical figures. And it's outrageous. It's outrageous. It makes me angry and it makes me sad. And the men that are sitting there defending it, they just came across like such cowards. But then when you start digging into how a lot of them come into the Nation of Islam, a lot of them were thugs and bad people in society, and I'm all about redemption and I'm all about rehabilitation. But when these people are talking, you realize they're not really rehabilitated at all, because they're sitting there defending murderers, and they're also defending they get upset at Malcolm for distancing himself from a man who performed statutory rape. I think when you have sex with teenagers, it's rape. Not only that, when you're like the leader of a movement and you have sex with the teenagers in the movement, it's statutory rape. So Malcolm X wanted to distance himself, and that's a fact. He did father those children, but those men are just sitting there making excuses, so I can't really relate to it. And a lot of people online are saying that the Nation of Islam is a cult, because if it wasn't a cult, then why are these people so blind to this? And it's not just the Nation of Islam. When you watch the documentary, you see you see the people just defending it. They're just kind of like, well, you know, who cares about that? He brought us Islam. Yeah, he did bring you guys Islam, but the Quran was always there and you could have always found it on your own. And the fact that he helped you find the Quran, thank you, but that doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. And I think this is why some of these people can't relate to Malcolm, because he's just standing for what is right and is able to go back on his word and say, no, I was wrong when I believed this. You know, he definitely, later on in his life, he was like, I'm not a racist, I'm against racism. I'm not a separatist, I'm against separatism. So, you know, this is why people admire Malcolm. But those charlatans and phony religious elders that, you know, Mr. Muhammad had on his documentary made me vomit. And I was utterly disgusted that he had those guys commenting on a prince like Malcolm X. They should not even open their mouths because they're not even in the same caliber. They're so lowly in their thinking and so lowly in their way of seeing things that they cannot even see anything except that Elijah Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm X betrayed him and he got what he deserved, and so what? This guy killed him and shot him and he didn't go to jail a day for it. Let's just let it rest. And forgiveness. Okay, let's talk about forgiveness for a moment. You can be forgiven when you take responsibility for what you have done and you have apologized. Did he write a letter to Mrs. Betty Shabazz? Did he write a letter to Malcolm X's children? Did he ever tell the world, I did this and I take full responsibility? Absolutely not. But all those commentators are just saying, oh, you know, he was a good guy in the end and this is not the same man who died. They're speaking for him. So when the interviewer, Mr. Muhammad, who did the documentary, asked him, he's like, did you talk to him? Did he tell you this? The guy got up and left. He got really angry because he didn't have two legs to stand on. He was spitting out lies and bullshit. So at the end of the documentary, you come out with a strong sense of who the man with the shotgun was, since the shotgun pellets are actually what the coroner said killed Malcolm X. You come out feeling like this particular person killed Malcolm X. But you are left with this sense of disgust and disdain because all of the elders from that mosque that they interview are just kind of like, leave it alone. They have no remorse and no sympathy for the family of Malcolm X. And they have no sympathy for the fact that Malcolm X was murdered. They're just kind of like, you know, in their little bubble, or I don't know, maybe it is a cult. I'm not going to speculate, but you do get a sense that these people are in their own bubble of justice and what's right. And one of them even made some misogynist comment about, how are you gonna let this man who taught you everything, how are you gonna let some stuff over a woman, over some women, get over on that? Like, over women? Like, what? Last time I checked, men come out of women, women give birth to men, and they nurse them. And I'm not even going to get into any kind of feminism, but that just shows you the bubble he's in and the kind of, I mean, some of them are old and you forgive them because they're elderly, but it's not true because I have elderly people in my family and they don't talk nonsense like this. So they fully understand statutory rape and they fully understand, you know, right and wrong. And these men are just former thugs who could not care less about justice. And I don't mean to come across so harsh, but that is the sentiment that I felt while watching this. And there should have been way more experts weighing in with a strong sense of sensibility and not this kind of nonchalance about statutory rape and murder. Not only murder, but murder in front of little children, in front of your own family member. They had no remorse and no care. So the documentary left me feeling, and he did conclude it with he's gonna get Norman Walker. Is it Norman 3X or Norman Walker? You guys know what his name is. He's going on a crusade to get him exonerated, or he's going on a crusade to get him off, and that's great. But from what I've researched, I'm kind of confused now because apparently he wasn't that good of a guy and he committed other murders. So maybe he'll be exonerated for committing Malcolm X's murder, but then there will be charges brought to him for other murders. I don't know. All of this is alleged. But I'm glad that I watched it. It wasn't a complete waste of my time, but it does leave me feeling like, ugh, like, you know, the bad people won. The bad people won. And the only satisfaction I can get is by going to watch Malcolm X on YouTube and being inspired by him and what he stood for and what he believed in, especially after he came back from Mecca and reading his autobiography, like I said before. You know, that's who I care about. That's why I watched the documentary to begin with, because his name was on it. And, I do wish his family well. I do wish his children well, and his wife, wherever she is. Um, I wish them the best. And for all the people capitalizing on his murder, I hope they develop more compassion and sensibility. Thanks for watching.